What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. I hope you're having a great start to your week. I can promise you one thing, it's about to get so much better because I get to have the privilege of having probably the most special guest ever, besides my husband and kids on the podcast. I get to have my great grandmother, Mamaw Jo, my grandmother to Mama, and my mom, Korie. So 4 generations here on the podcast. And we're actually going to be talking about aging, the fears that people have in aging. And, the whole idea of this podcast kind of got started because my friends were all getting nervous to grow older. And I know this is going to sound really funny to y'all, but everyone was scared to turn 30. And I was like,
oh my goodness.
I know.
I remember that though.
I know. So everyone was like scared to turn 30. And I'm 27, so I'm not there yet. And I was like, really? Y'all are scared to turn 30? And I was like, I'm so excited to be 30. Not that I'm rushing it. I love being where I'm at, but I'm excited for 30. And they're like, why are you excited to be 30? And I was like, well, because Mama always said that she thinks women are just the most beautiful in their 30s. And so I've always been like, 30 is going to be awesome. I'm going to peak at 30. Like, you think this is cute. Wait till you see me at 30. No, but for real, I was excited about 30s because I'd heard you say that. And because I see women in their 30s and I think, oh, they're so beautiful. And they're crushing it. And so I've kind of I think you painted that picture for me to see it in that way. And then I also it kind of led me to a deeper thought of why am I not scared of aging? Because a lot of my friends talk about being afraid of aging. And I was like, I don't think I'm afraid of aging because I'm very close to my 93-year-old grandmother, who's one of my biggest inspirations. And then I'm very close to my grandmother, who's crushing it and in her 70s, which people cannot believe when they see you. And I'm super close to my mom. And so y'all have given me so much to look forward to. And even you, on your birthdays, you'll say something along the lines of the age I'm at is the age I'm supposed to be. And there's more in this age than there was in the last one. And y'all have always just given me such a hope for getting older, which is such a gift, honestly, to have that, because I can see why the fear of aging would be scary. So we open up the DMs and you guys send in a lot of questions and a lot of fears when it comes to aging that I'm going to ask them about. But before we get into the DMs, I just want to go ahead and throw out some things that are unique about you guys, like the fact that I said maybe you should wear some headphones today because that could help you hear better. And you're like, I'm too vain for that. No, I'm not going to wear those big, bulky headphones that you wear. So is it true that you're vain at 93 years old?
Absolutely. Mammaw, just claim it. That's right.
And is it true you're still regularly shopping for your closet?
Now that's ridiculous, but yes, I am.
Yeah. And this all came out. You need to tell why this all came out. I think it was to Bella. You said it to Bella, and so it's kind of been a family joke since then. You probably don't even remember this.
Probably not.
But you were looking for a dress for Bella's wedding, and Bella was like, "Oh, have you picked something?" And you were like, "No, I'm still looking." You said, "It's just terrible to be this vain at 90," because you were like, I'm annoyed the fact that I really want to find a beautiful dress and I'm still care about that at 90. But I'm like, that's not something to be annoyed by. That's wonderful.
That
and it's an inspiration for all of us. Yeah. So you said that then and you said it as a joke, but we all loved it. And so
I'm the vain grandma.
We've carried it. No, you're not.
Well, you're really
but
not.
That's the thing is you're not vain. You care.
No, I do
you
care.
And
right.
that's what's beautiful. You're not vain. Which is why we can joke and laugh about it. Because if you really were, then we'd be like, oh, Mammaw's vain. You're not. Yeah. You care.
Thanks,
you care
Korie.
about being beautiful and presenting your best self and taking care. And we all love that about you. And we all feel the same way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
Well, you said it to me too, because we took a picture together one time and I thought, oh, she's going to think this is so sweet that I'm posting a picture of me and her. And you were like, Sadie, that is not a good picture of me. And you were like, and you said it's a pain to be this vain at my age. And so,
it is.
But actually, okay, but in all honesty, do you think that caring about what you look like in some sense has helped you age well?
Well, sure. Oh, yes. Because it's just rising above how you feel.
Yeah.
Or, if you don't feel well that day, a little makeup and looking better in the mirror makes you feel a little better.
That's so true.
It's a philosophy that she really has lived with, because I remember when we were growing up and we all had chicken pox at the same time. So you can imagine five of the 6 kids had it at the same time. And Mama would come in and brush her hair and put bows in it, because she would say, if we looked better, we would feel better. And so I'm not so sure about the chickenpox episode, though, but it really is a philosophy that she has lived with in life. And
Yes.
she just gets up in the morning, gets her makeup on, fixes her hair, starts her day. And I think it has served her well. And she has aged so well because, not that she's vain, but because she cares how she presents
Right.
herself
Yeah.
and how she takes care of herself. She cares about that.
No,
Yeah,
that's good.
And if I don't get up and do that in the morning, somebody's going to come by with a camera and want to take a picture of me with grandkids.
That's
right, yeah.
But
I don't want to be caught.
I think that the way you have carried it, because none of us are like, oh, like beauty is the thing that matters.
No.
It's
No.
about
No.
caring for yourself.
Yes.
It's a loving
That's right.
yourself enough to care about putting your best foot forward and presenting yourself in a way that you care about others when others come to see you, that you're
Yeah.
dressed and you're ready and you're excited to welcome somebody in that
Yeah.
way.
You bet.
So I think
That's so true, because I think, a lot of people think of in the unhealthy way of sometimes an older generation of like, put your lipstick on, baby. Like, you got to present yourself well. And then that sometimes puts pressure on you to feel like you always have to look a certain way. But it's not about an image. It's about just like a presence of being awake and alive and ready for the day and what you're going to conquer. And so, no, I love it. I love it so much.
I like that explanation much better than the vanity.
Yeah, it's true. The vain thing's just funny.
Yeah.
There's so many things I want to talk about too, but I'm just thinking of a few things that I've seen in y'all getting older that is really impressive. Like this week, literally when Two Mama challenged me to a swim race in the pool, and I was actually scared I was going to lose. Like, I was like,
But she didn't.
this could go like really wrong.
I need to get in on this.
And
I want to
could
see.
be really
I wonder,
embarrassed.
can I beat
Well,
you?
and I'm not that fast of a swimmer, and I know that about myself, which is a little bit hard for me to admit because I have delusional confidence in every other area of my life except the pool. But I was like, oh, I might lose. Okay, so I was trying really hard, and I almost did lose, but I didn't. But still, the fact that you even challenged me to that is just hilarious because you're in your 70s. And then after, Two Mom was like, have you seen the woman in her, which one did you say? The woman who's running those marathons?
Yeah, the runner.
Like,
Yeah.
have you seen the woman in her 80s running the marathon? I was like, yeah. And then she's like, and have you seen the one doing gymnastics? And I said, yes. And then she said, I think I could do swimming. Like, I think, and I was like, I think you could. Like, you almost beat me. So, yeah, you might. But, like,
Well-
what even in you is still like, okay, in the sense of this, somebody asked this question, and I'm diving into a little bit of the questions, but I still have other things to say that I'm thinking of. But someone's like, how do you not fear that the best days were behind you? And you always are looking forward to something. Like, you're like, maybe I could enter swimming competitions. Maybe I can, or you don't say maybe, you're doing the next TikTok trend. You're doing the next, like, whatever's happening in the world, you're kind of assessing your ability and how you can fit into that. Like, how do you keep dreaming so big?
That is such a great question. I don't know what drives me to do that. Maybe I've got some vanity too. I don't know what drives that other than I just live with a hopeful attitude of what the next day is going to bring. And I've always lived like that. And I've never thought, even though I was like super, like I did swim a swim team, but I'm not kidding. I was the size of a toothpick and not very fast at all. I never thought that I couldn't do it. You know, there was something in me. I had great parents who were encouraging, but not encouraging enough that we all thought we were going to go to the Olympics, just encouraging enough to know that you can do what you want to do, set your mind to it and go do it. So I had great parents. So I always felt like that. And then I just love that idea of challenging and why I like follow somebody who's 90 who swims, because I love to see what other people do. And that challenges me to do other things. And, you know, I just posted that thing about the 10 things I've learned by watching the Olympics. So that's just kind of how my brain works. I look at things and I put that into what can I do with that, and how can that help me to be a better person, whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever.
That's good. So I'm thinking about, where I'm at right now in my 20s. And again, it sounds funny to say so many people in their 20s are so afraid of turning 30, but it's true. And then there's also this thing in your 20s where you think like, this is the time of your life to make it happen. Like, if you're going for a dream, like it's your 20s, like you got to go for it. That's what you think. That's what you feel because you're looking at everyone around you and they're graduating college and they have these degrees and they're getting jobs and they're doing this. So you feel like I should be doing that or I need to get that. Mom, you're 50. I know the answer to this, but I will ask you, do you feel like it had to happen in your 20s?
Absolutely not. I mean, actually, Dad and I were going through like decade by decade, and like this decade was about this, and this was this, and the dynasty happened in our 40s, and like what different things that happened in each decade, and we're like, there's something else in this next decade, and then something in the next, and the next, and the next, and it's exciting to think about, like, what does God have for us in each decade, because it changes and grows, and it does not all have to happen in your 20s. 20s were great. They were fun. I was having babies and I was the children's minister at a church, and there was really sweet, fun things about that, but there were amazing things about my 30s and then 40s, and now I'm entering my 50s. I just entered my 50s last year, and I'm excited about what that is and what's to come in that. I think that looking at your life is like hopeful of like, oh, there is something more, there's something else to it, and what's it going to be, looking at it like an adventure as well.
Yeah, and I think like it's really cool to see that you've seen Two Mama do that, you've seen Mammaw Jo do that, I see you guys do that, so we have this like hope for what's to come. But to Two Mama's point, like Two Mama's following these people on Instagram that are 80 and 90, doing these marathons, doing these gymnastics things. And so it's amazing. Like the internet and books and podcasts give you the opportunity to learn from so many people doing things that are very inspiring. And so, for those listening, you might not be like, you might not have generations in your family that you can look to. And maybe we can be an inspiration for that. But one, you can start it for your family. And two, there are families out there and people out there who've opened their life up on social media that you can follow along and learn from. And I know you do that. And I know that is directly what inspired you to say, I think I could have a career in my swimming in my 70s. And I know you were kind of kidding, but I think you might have been a little serious.
Sadie, when she told me that she had done that, I said immediately, who won?
Who won? Yeah, because it was questionable. You might have won. Yeah. I mean, to be real, we talked about this right before, but Two Mama's reels on Instagram have gotten more views than mine have. And like, I have 5 million followers and I've never gotten 30 million views on a reel. And Two Mama.
Just 27.
Two Mama. Just 27. No, I think it's up to 29. I think you need to check again. But Two Mama's Instagram is so like, funny. And then she showed me this reel she did the other day. And she said, is this cringy? Which, first of all, the fact that my grandma asked me if her reel was cringy is epic. But then the second thing about it was that it wasn't cringy. It was really cool. And I had not seen that trend. So that's funny that I was more behind. And I don't even know how to edit like that. So everything about that moment was so cool. But to Mama, talk a little bit about how technology keeps, like learning technology.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Mammaw Jo got an iPhone before I did. Like Mammaw Jo's always been up on technology. She's in on it. She knows what's happening in the world before any of us. So that was modeled by Mammaw.
Do you think that's important though, to stay up to date with technology in the world?
Yes. It's important to stay up with anything that's happening in the world. And technology is where it is right now. I was fortunate enough to work until I was 84. So I was in a situation with computers everywhere, and it just gave me the perfect opportunity to stay right there with the trend as it was getting big.
Yeah. See, I think that's cool because I think what y'all have done well is like you didn't let yourself become the stereotypical version of old in the sense of like, oh, all the kids are on Instagram. I don't know even how to work it, or I don't know how to work this iPhone, or, I don't understand that, so I'm not gonna even try. Like, y'all have actually integrated like yourself to that and like learned it alongside of the rest of us, which is really amazing. Even like y'all do that in a lot of different areas, but especially technology. Y'all, it can be hard to have a well-balanced diet. When it comes to keeping up with a balanced diet, I'm thankful for all the help I can get. So I rely on Hungry Root to help me find the best quality meats and seafood, snacks, sweets, kid snacks, and more. Hungry Root makes healthy living simpler with their fresh, high-quality groceries, simple meal planning ideas, and awesome selections. I got to take a short little quiz that Hungry Root offers that they got to know me, my health goals, taste preferences, and more. And then they built me a personalized shopping cart full of things that would fit my needs for the week. Plus recommendations on how to use all those groceries whenever you get them, because that can be the hard part. Is like you have all these, they get stuck in the back of the fridge, but not with them. They'll help you use them too. The cart is fully customizable, so then I could choose whether I wanted to keep their suggestions or choose for myself. Plus, everything from Hungry Root follows the simple rule. It has to taste good, be quick to prepare, and made with whole, trusted ingredients. Hungry Root gives me the peace of mind that comes with knowing that I've got a pantry and fridge full of guilt-free, delicious food. We love Hungry Root. The first time we tried it, I was like, okay, this is a game changer. I don't have to go to the grocery store. I get such cool products that even our local grocery stores don't carry, which is really fun. Also, they picked for me, so I didn't have to take time to pick. And it was even better than things I picked. We actually became big fans of the things that we would have never thought to buy that Hungry Root chose from us that then became a regular. So right now, Hungry Root is offering Whoa, That's Good podcast listeners 40% off your first delivery. And get this, free veggies for life. You heard that right. Just go to hungryroot.com/whoa to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies for life. That's hungryroot.com/whoa. And don't forget to use our link so that they know we sent you there. And one of the questions I thought was really good was, how did you not become insensitive to the younger generation? Because that does happen a lot.
Mhm. I love that. And for me, how I've not who I'm not is because my whole family is younger than me. And so if I want to stay a part of their lives, then I want to know what's happening to them, what they're involved in, what trends they're following. I don't want to be them. I'm not that age anymore, but I want to know what's happening in their lives. And then I've also, I work at a Christian camp, so I stay connected to young people every summer. So every summer I have 1,400 kids that I interact with. So that, I would say to anybody who's worried about being insensitive to kids, get out and be among them. Teach a Sunday school class. Volunteer somewhere, have them over at your home, cook hamburgers, have them eat with you, and go to one of Sadie's rallies when there's 80,000 young people who are wanting to better themselves and better the future for America. That'll help you change your mind about what's coming up behind us. Because, every generation can think that. Every generation can think, "Ooh, look at this. How are they going to do what we did?" And I think every generation did do that. Surely Mama and Daddy did with us in the 60s. Like, what are these kids going to be? And then now those of us kids of the 60s are the boomers who are saying, what is this generation going to do? So every generation can have that, but every generation can rise above. And how one of the ways they rise above is by having solid leaders in the older generation who helps lead the way for them.
Yep. That's so good. I was hoping you were going to say something along the lines of being among them, because not only do you work at a camp every summer, but you've done that for 55 years of going out to camp every summer and being with students and kids, and not just like, oh, you go and serve for an hour. Like, you're there the whole time.
9
like
weeks,
if someone's
yes.
sick, they're calling you. You did more hospital runs this time than probably ever. Like, you're like with them, learning about them. And it actually inspires me too, because even for me, and I know this is funny because I'm only 10 years out of high school, but I'm talking to high schoolers a lot. And even how much it's changed in 10 years since I was in high school with technology and stuff, when I'm going to talk to high schoolers, if I don't sit with high schoolers, I am more quick to judge them for the things that I'm seeing and hearing. And so then I can come and talk to high schoolers, and I can be more like harsh with my language. I was like, what are you thinking? Why are you acting like that? Or I can sit with them and learn and understand. And then I come with it with so much more empathy. And so I think like even in your 20s, like starting to practice that with with like middle school and high schoolers. And then, that's going to help you as you continue to age, because even 10 years out of high school, it already creeps in to be more judgmental of the way that people are acting who are younger than you.
Right, because certainly they are different.
Yeah.
Every generation is different and does present different challenges to those of us who are looking back at it.
Yeah.
But
it's funny how fast. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, one of the things that I was talking with somebody about who just moved here into our community, and about just the fact that we do live more intergenerationally, like we do mix generations. And so I think that is a part of it, is like, because you've always done that, like you're a part of our lives. Like you're not just like, oh, the grandmother that we see every once in a while. Like you're an active part of our lives, showing up at our things. We want to be a part of what you're doing, and so living that way is, I think, is unique to some people. They don't see that a whole lot. And I think that is and I think part of it is because, well, we love one another. We want to be together, and we create fun environments to be together in. But also, I think y'all come of it as there's a humility in yeah, we're like, I love being with you, and I want to know about you, and I want to learn from you too. And I want to, rather than a judgmentalness of oh, I'm
exactly.
older
I
and
know.
you're an idiot, or whatever. You're the young person who doesn't know what they're thinking. You do. You've always had that. You've always
there's
carried
so
that.
much to be learned from young people.
Yeah.
And as you age, that's so important for you to remember, is that you have so much to learn from them. Bella is the one who taught me how to use that first iPhone.
Did she really?
Yeah, she really did.
She was.
And I think she was like 5 or 6, just very young. But she just picked it up and she started punching buttons and
Wow.
let me
great.
not be so scared of it then.
That's crazy.
great. And for you to be humble enough to be I'm going to learn from my
Well, certainly.
great-granddaughter.
Absolutely.
It's so great.
I didn't know what that thing was.
That's one of the coolest things to me about being, what did you say, intergenerational?
Yeah.
Is that the
Yes.
term?
Yeah.
Because it has to go both ways. Like the young person has to respect the older person enough to realize you have a lot to learn. And the older person has to be humble enough to learn even whenever they know so much more. And
Yeah.
I always feel like this because whenever I talk to anyone older outside of my family, because I'm in a life of a lot of people who are older with what I do. And I'm always amazed, and the relationships that I form with older people as a friend is so amazing because they're humbling themselves enough to get to know me and learn from me, even though I'm so painfully aware of the fact that how am I teaching you anything? I feel like this is crazy, but they genuinely mean it.
Yeah.
You're saying no, there is so much to learn. It's not just
Yeah.
that you're faking it to make you feel better. You're actually leaning in and listening, and that's really felt on the other side. It
Can
makes
I
you
make
feel
another
loved.
comment too? One thing I love what Korie said about someone who saw that in the community, because it isn't just us. When we go to ball games, the whole front row will be the grandparents who are lined up with their comfy chairs, ready
That's
to cheer
true.
on their grandchildren and their great grandchildren.
Yeah.
So we have seen that modeled in our community too, and I think that's great. And if you're out there listening and you haven't seen that modeled, it always can start with you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the coolest thing about any tradition or anything you want to start. You can start that.
Yep,
So-
I love that so much. This question is so good because this girl that sent in this question, I relate to this a lot because someone said, I'm afraid, my fear of aging is how the world is changing and how it will affect my life. And actually, true story, and you might not realize this, but sometimes whenever I am afraid of what's happening, in the world around me, whether it's what I'm seeing on the news or politically or whatever, I come over to your house and I would ask you questions. And I'm what I'm kind of listening for is have you seen this before? Have you lived through this before? Are you nervous about this? Because I know with 93 years, you've seen a lot, you've lived through a lot, and there are many times in your life with the world going on around you, there was fearful things. I remember you said that when y'all were in elementary school, you would have practice for if a bomb was sent, from Russia or something at the time. And then, y'all have just lived through a lot. You've seen a lot. And so for us, some of these things, it feels like the first time this is happening, even though it's not, but it's the first time we're experiencing this. And it can feel so scary. Like, what's the world going to be? And how am I going to raise my family in this? And so can you speak to a little bit about just that fear of the world around you and what you can't control?
We're always going to have fears. There's always going to be sickness. There's always going to be death, because that's part of life. But you just have to not dwell on those things. Mm-hmm. You have to think ahead instead of behind. Always, Sadie. Living in your past, and I've seen so many old people now that do that. They just live their lives in what we used to do or what we did then, instead of taking each day as it comes and going from that day forward and just looking forward to what's out there next. It's just at this time in my life, I call myself a spectator, because I know I'm not going to ski anymore. I'm not going to play tennis anymore or run swimming races with my grandkids. But I get to see 3-year-olds carrying on conversations with each other and watching them learn to swim the first time or dive the first time, and encouraging them and how to stand with their feet next to each other on the side of the pool and do those things that will help me to interact with them. And it's just not that. It's just realizing that all we have is today. We're never promised tomorrow. And if you don't get up every morning and look in the mirror and decide what kind of day you're going to have, you're going to have a bad one, because it's the joy is out there if you are just ready to accept that.
Wow.
And it means really kind of putting you in your hip pocket and start thinking about what others do and what you can do to help them.
Wow. That's so good.
I didn't mean that to sound profound. That's just a simple way I look at it.
You accidentally just dropped a profound, whoa, that's a good moment. You said something before we started the podcast that I thought was very profound. And you talked about how fear is all about being young, because as you grow, the less fear you have, which is interesting because so many of us are afraid of getting older.
Right.
But as you get older, from your experience, your fear has gotten less. Why do you think that is?
Oh, because I've learned that you live through those things. But I have gone through just terrible losses in my life. And I've seen people suffer through worse things than death. So that it's not a frightening thing. It's just a part of living. And if you go into those things afraid of dying, you're afraid of living, because that's what it is. Living is waiting for the next thing to happen, like Korie says.
Wow.
It's not about thinking about the bad things that could happen or the unknown that you can't even imagine what will happen. It's just taking each day as it is. My husband was the one who was the dearest human being in the world. But he was the one who always said, you decide every morning when you look in your bathroom mirror what day you're going to have. Wow. And he said, I just choose to have a good day.
Wow.
And that's what we've promised, is only that day.
Wow.
So why not look for the best in it?
Come on, that is so beautiful. Now we're all
we're all trying not to cry
go home now.
We're trying to hold it in.
I know, I'm like,
that's amazing.
Can't cry.
Yes.
That's beautiful. I remember, you really live that, and you have such a good perspective of that, because I remember when you broke your back and I came over and I said to you, I said, what happened? How did you break your back? And you said something that you were sweeping. And I said, you just broke your back while you were sweeping? Which I shouldn't have said. And and hindsight, that was too much.
Didn't shake me up.
Yeah, but then I'm glad I did, because you said, well, I think how old were you at the time? 89, 90?
Yeah, something like that.
You were like, I'm 90 years old. And she said, well, honey, your body's not meant to last forever. Your bones are gonna, you said something along the lines of rot away. And it really stopped me. And I was like, true,
It's true.
And
Yeah.
when you're 27, you're not thinking like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so for you to go through such a terrible thing, like breaking your back and being so much pain, and just have the perspective of like, well, my body's not going to last forever. And
Nope.
that's a part of it. And it was, when you said it, it was like you had just come to terms with it, and not in like a sad, grieving way, but of this is how it is, and I'm still
Yeah,
showing up,
that's
and
right.
we're still
That's
having a
right.
conversation, and you're still
Exactly.
living your life. And here you are years later after breaking your back at 93, like doing so much better. And so I think what you said was like really powerful of, I've lived through it, and I
Yeah.
know now that you will live through
And
it.
that's what gives you that wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's a wisdom that
Mhm.
comes with age because of the experiences that you've had.
Life can be so crazy, and it especially is right now, from kids to podcasting, conference coming up, and it can be really hard to form and stick to habits that are good for me because I never know what the next day is going to bring. Taking care of my health isn't always easy, but it should at least be simple. So for the past few years, I've been drinking AG1 every day, and just one scoop once a day makes me feel so much better. It makes me feel like I can handle whatever's thrown at me. Every serving delivers what I need to keep up with my health goals, like prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for a healthy gut. Good gut health is so important for overall wellness, and in a research study, AG1 was shown to double the amount of healthy bacteria in your gut. AG1 covers all of my other nutritional bases like vitamins and nutrients that support my brain and immune health too, and it's an essential part of my everyday routine. I just fill up a glass of cold water with one scoop of AG1, shake it up, that's it. Plus, it's full of adaptogens and antioxidants to give me an extra boost, which comes in handy if I'm heading into an extra busy day. People ask me about AG1 all the time because they know how much I love it, and yes, it really is a game changer for your health, your focus, your energy, and living your best. Truly, the first day I took it, I noticed such a difference in just like the way that I felt, my energy, my focus was so much more clear. And plus, I have had gut health issues in the past, and I'm always looking for like something to take to help with it. And if you go down like the vitamin aisle, there's a million different things you could choose from. So it's just so great to have it all simplified into one thing that covers all the bases, and that's why I love AG1 so much. So if there's one product that I trust to support my whole body's health, it's AG1, and that's why I've been partnered with them for so long. It's easy and satisfying to start your journey with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/whoa. Again, that's drinkag1.com/whoa to check it out today.
Also, I remember when Mamaw had COVID, the first time you had COVID, I went over to visit you and brought some food or something like that. And you were sitting up in your chair, and I said, well, Mamaw, you look great. You were like, had your makeup on, you were dressed. And I said, well, don't you feel bad? Don't you just want to get in your bed? And you said, I'm not going to get in the bed and lay down and get pneumonia. You were like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm sitting up because I've got to
Yep.
get this. And you're like, no, you said, no, I feel terrible, but I'm not going to lay in the bed and get pneumonia. And I was like, great point.
Fair.
You're doing good. Stay sitting up. Like, even though
Oh,
you
I'm
feel
so
terrible.
glad I'm still teaching you things, Korie.
It was so smart because I was like, you're so right. If you would have laid in that bed, you would have probably got pneumonia.
Yeah,
but you
probably.
sat up and you made yourself get up and
Well,
get
no,
going.
that was at a time when people died with COVID, so
Exactly. You're like,
it was kind of scary.
I'm not going to lay down. And it was so smart. And it was part of even how you live your life. You're like, am I going to lay down and just let it,
Yeah.
let life happen to me?
Yeah.
No, I'm going to sit
Keep
up.
living. Keep
and
living.
keep living. Yes. It was a
Man.
great
And
lesson.
some people do that.
Yes,
some people
that's
do
right.
choose to
That's
just
right.
lay down and or sit in the chair and whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody lives their own life. But
Mhm.
you
That's
know,
right.
the example I had was a mom who, when she had
Mhm.
COVID, says, "I'm not going to get in bed."
Yeah.
So then, of course,
Yeah.
I live my life like that too, and that's
Yeah.
how. And like she said, our
Yes, you
daddy
do.
was
You
like that.
definitely do. How do you think, because a lot of the questions that were sent in, or a lot of the fears, were all around like, a lot of them were around, well, there's kind of two parts to this. I'll go to the first one first. The first fear that people had, the majority of, was of dying or losing a loved one. And it's really interesting because, like, at you and Tupapa's age, a lot of times when I call you, say, what are you doing? You're going to a funeral. And like you've said before, like when you get to my age, you go to a lot of funerals, which is really sad. But y'all say it casually and not like in a like you're not being sensitive situation, but you just have experienced that because of the nature of life. At our age, that's so scary, to think about. But I think, more and more you have to. Like the last year of my life, I went to more funerals of young people than old people. So it's a part of life. Dying is a part of everyone's life. It just is. You can't escape that. And so it's not worth escaping the conversation about it because it's scary or intimidating. How do you feel like you learn to cope with that? And has your idea of heaven grown greater getting older? Do you think about that more? And does it help you? That's loaded.
I think all of that is true. And I think it's also true to acknowledge that when you're 27, it's normal to have those fears about that. I know when I was younger, I thought, how would I ever live without my mom or dad? And now my daddy's been in heaven now like 15 years. And some days I wake up like, wait, what? Because that person never goes out of your thinking ever and stays with you. But it is back to that same philosophy. But then there's another day. There's the next day that you have to get up. You've got other family members. You've got things to do. Life goes on. That person, that your loved one is in a good place and you're happy. And for that, the sadness is still there, comes back from time to time of just not being able to see that person. But you do learn that you can do it, even though you think maybe at 27, I couldn't do it. I couldn't live without that person. But you do. You can. Everybody can. It's like saying, I can't get off this couch. Well, yeah, you can. You just put your foot down first.
Yeah.
And step and get off, And so I think, again, like Mama keeps saying, it's with age and experience and going through it, everything we do is a lesson in that we can do it again if we did it this time.
Sure.
From learning how to dive.
Yep.
The first time you dove off a diving board was super scary. The second time was not as scary. The third time wasn't scary. The fourth and fifth time, you're just running and jumping because that's life, that everything we do the first time is going to be the scariest time. But that's the teaching moment.
Yeah.
And then not that we get desensitized to it, but that we cope in a better way and that we're able to move on.
I remember one thing that helped me with the thought of that was because I think it's like so natural with the people in your life that you love the most, you're of course the most afraid that something's going to happen to them. So like my whole life, remember I was like crippled by the fear that something's going to happen to you. And like every time you go to town, I would get so worried. And then it was like when me and Christian got married, I was so scared something was going to happen to him. And then I had kids and I'm so scared something's going to happen to them. Then I realized like this is just always going to be unless I learn to continuously like give that to God and like know that, in Psalms 91 where it talks about being under the shadow of the Almighty's wing. I remember one day I like reached out my hands just to see how big my wingspan was, and it's not very big. And I thought it's a good thing all my people aren't under the shadow of my wing. And they can't be. Yeah. They're under the shadow of Almighty's wing. But I remember one day I asked you about that fear. I can't remember, maybe I was talking to you about it. And you talked to me about reading the book Imagine Heaven. And then I read the book and it gave me so much more peace because I knew that's what you believed and that's what I believe. And so if the worst happened to you, this is what you believed is next. And that's what I believe is next. So at the end of the day, I would be happy for heaven and excited for heaven. And I remember after I read Imagine Heaven thinking, I'm going to have to read this book every year, and I'm just going to have it close to me. And I haven't read it every year, but I have continuously gone back to it to give me like hope. And so I do think like, for those listening who are my age, who are afraid of that, one, like have the conversation with the people that you love, get to know what their thoughts are about heaven and what happens after. It kind of gives you comfort to know what the people around you in life believe in and what you're heading to and give you hope for the future. And like being anchored in Christ is, man, what a gift. That's why it's like the good news, because you do have hope beyond this world, because this world is not our home. So
yeah. I think that goes back to that conversation about being excited for what's next. Like because we have the hope of heaven, we can be excited for what's next and excited for our loved ones, for where they are and what they're experiencing, that we're going to get to see them again. Yes. And so that excitement for what's next, I think is is a beautiful thing about our hope. Also, I was thinking about, I have a friend, Alicia Cholet, has been on your podcast, and she starts her prayers with, and she kind of led us in this one time, like before we started a prayer, and it was like, it's just this acknowledgement to God, like, you gave me my first breath and you know my last. And it's just this acknowledgement that like, it's not in my control. Like I didn't come here. Someone created me. I didn't come here on my own. And God knows our last breath. He's ordered it already. It's already set. Like, so it's not in my control. So I don't have to worry about it or fear it. Or I know that God has it. He gave me my first. He knows my last. And
don't start
the crying has already started. Mamaw started it. Now I'm just like, now that I'm talking, here you go. So, but yes. So that, I just love that. I thought it was such a good, just like release to say to God every day, like that it's not in my control.
And I want to add to that. You said have the conversation, but I think have the conversation with yourself too.
Yeah,
because I remember when mine, and I will try to say this without crying, when my 3 were little, that's your biggest worry is something would happen to your children. And I remember deliberately having a conversation with myself about that they would be in heaven with God, and that what a better place could there be, you know?
Yep.
Okay, no more crying.
I know, here we are talking about death.
Well, Come on. I know it's hard. And that's why I texted y'all this morning and said, I don't know if we can have this conversation without talking about this, because this is like the biggest fear of aging is death. But it's also like, it's natural. And but then at the same time, like, not to be naive to the fact that death is not just something that happens when you age, and that we've walked through really a lot of young people this past year passing in our community. And so I think a lot of our community, at least, has been having this conversation anyways. And we're having it younger because we've experienced it now with youth and with our kids. It's like so scary. And my counselor like does this thing, and Dr. Amen does it too, where it's like, ask yourself, like, what am I afraid of the most? And then you say it. And he's like, is it true? Is it absolutely true? And then you get down to it, and it's like, if this is what Miss Tara does. She's like, okay, if it happened, would you be okay? And like, you kind of want to go, no. And she's like, yes, you would, because Jesus would still be on the throne, and because you still believe in heaven, and because you have the hope of that. And then you're like, oh, okay, I would. But if I didn't have the hope of heaven, I didn't have Jesus, I don't know if I would. I don't think I could. I don't think I actually would say no, because it only turned because Jesus rose from the grave, Right. And so I think that's why like it is so powerful. Like you have to have that conversation with yourself. And that's where like your faith really comes into play, because it only turns to hope if there is hope. And I believe there is,
Right. That's exactly the question that I asked myself in my 20s. I didn't have a counselor, but I probably read a good book, and that something taught me to say, if this happened, would you go on living? Could you go on living if the very worst thing could happen? And when you have a strong faith in God, the answer is yes, you would go on. And while it would not be easy, it wouldn't be fun, it wouldn't be the best thing in life, but you would still go on, and life would find happiness and joy down the road too. So yeah. And I think for you, you're right. In your community, you guys have gone through some things that a lot of young people don't go through. And we also did at our church with when I was in my early 20s, and it was the death of a child, and so that forces you to like face that issue a little bit. But if you haven't been through that and you're listening, you should just face that with yourself now, and have that conversation, do that deep study, and know where your heart is.
I think like preparing for life, you can't prepare for most things that happen, right. It's out of your control, but you can prepare your heart, for things to happen. So that like Craig Gershaw is like, what does he say? Predetermine how you're going to respond in a sense. And it's like, go ahead and like predetermine what you value, what your hope is in, where your heart's at, so that when it happens, you're not like scrambling to figure it out after the fact. Like you already kind of set your heart in the right place.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned Imagine Heaven, because that's like my go-to. But also I think about Levi Lesko's Through the Eyes of a Lion. Reading that book, I remember thinking like, the death of a child is not something that you want to be prepared for, but reading a book like that where someone else has experienced it and how and the heart and the but also the hope in that, it does prepare you. So
Yes.
I think that is like if you find those good books, like I think that's a good one. Imagine Heaven's a good one to read, to say like, this is not something I want to have to be prepared for, but you do need to be prepared because that is life. Like you said, Mammaw, it's life. It's part. It is part of life.
Well,
Death is part of life.
and when you see people who can't cope, it's because you're talking about someone telling you how you can do this, and someone's never told these people how that can be done, or maybe they've not faced that with someone who can help them through that.
Yes.
But just reading about those things and other people's experiences
You need
can
that.
show you that it can be done and that you have gone on with life in spite of that.
Yes. I think that's the important thing about sitting with generations and learning people's stories, hearing people's stories, being genuinely interested in their answers.
Right.
Like, that's why I come to you and ask you these questions. It gives me a confidence and a hope that, like, okay, this is where she's at in life, and this is kind of how she got there, and this is the thing she faced. And then, I do that with y'all, and then also like podcasts, like listening to podcasts. I love listening to podcasts. Like, that's one of the reasons I do a podcast, is I hope people find what I'm finding through that platform in this one, and then reading books is so important. Listening to memoirs, one of my favorite things to do, and like hearing someone's story. And I think nowadays, like, yes, there's TikTok, Instagram, different things. You can kind of get that in some places there. You can see an example, but you're never going to get like you can't get that much wisdom from it, because the caption's limited to a certain amount of characters and a picture's limited to a certain amount of space. So I think you really do have to step outside of just squares and filters and captions and learn about the messiness of a person's life and how they got through it.
And memoirs, when you read, you see how the strength in people, what they can go through, what you can go through. Like, I think we are stronger than we think. And sometimes you don't know that until you are put to the test of that. But you can experience that through other people's lives and through their stories when you read their memoir, and you like Corrie ten Boom, or some of the people who've had just difficult, like the hardest things you can possibly imagine in life, and made it through it. Yeah, you're like, oh, okay, like we are stronger than we think. We do have, there's more in us than we know that is in there.
It's so true. It's so good. Gosh, this is so good. I feel like everything we say, everyone's on the verge of a tear, because it's the hard conversations, but these are the places to have the hard conversations, intergenerationally. And I think one thing that I think church does a great job at is providing a space for intergenerational conversations. So if you're not a part of a church family, that's a great place to get to know older people in your community, younger people in your community, all of the above. It's a space to gather together under the hope you have of heaven with a body of believers of all ages. So that's a beautiful aspect of church that if you don't have, you should plug into a church. If you are at a church and you haven't gotten that yet, look for small groups in different ways. A lot of churches, older women will host Bible studies that youngers are invited to. You just got to be the one to show up, And so that's a great way to get plugged in. I'm going to ask her one more question that's on a lot lighter note, and kind of maybe a funnier way to end. But I think that we have to talk about this because we talked about being vain and funny and all that kind of stuff and showing up. But like, there is a real fear of aging when it comes to like your skin changing and your body changing and everything like that. And I feel like we've seen in Hollywood lately a lot of women resisting the pressure of looking young forever. Like, they're like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to even try to do that because that's not right. Like, I think Cameron Diaz has been talking about it a lot. Korie Robertson has been talking about it a lot. Sarah Jessica Parker, like, you're seeing pictures of them where like people are trying to pick apart the fact that they're getting older, and they will come right back and say, I am getting older. And so don't come at me. Yeah. But someone said, I fear that I'm placing all my confidence on looking young right now. Did y'all have to have a conversation with yourself on the fact that, okay, it's changing and it's okay? How did y'all accept it and roll with it?
You cover it up.
That's like Mama hasn't worn short sleeves in 10 years.
15 years.
15 years.
Exactly.
I was so not expecting that. That was so good. Hey,
It's true.
That's
It's
fair.
true. It's a continual conversation where you you see the neck, you're like, yep, that's there.
like I
That's
say,
just
like,
the way
okay,
it is.
time
That's
That's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
And
Yes.
it's not fun. You don't like it, but that's just the way it
It's
is.
part of.
Yeah.
There's
It's part of
certainly
it.
not. There's not any going back on that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's better
It's
than the
just there.
alternative, which would be death, because, it's part of life. That means we're still alive.
That's
We're
right.
growing. We're
That's
changing.
right.
So-
that is
Yeah.
so funny. Hey, that's so real. And I think that's why actresses are like getting all like on it because they're like, we can't cover it up. Like it's gonna be on
Yeah.
the screen. You're getting my picture. So
Yeah.
I do have wrinkles now. And yes, my body did change because I'm older, which I appreciate that they're doing that and not
Yeah.
trying to put their confidence in looking
Yes.
younger.
Yes.
Because when you walk in freedom, you give the gift of letting other people around you walk in the freedom too. And that's
Yeah.
why I think like our culture's done a good job at showing all body types now because you're more comfortable in to be who you are and not have to fit just like a mold out there. And so I love that older people are not trying to always look like younger people because then it does make you afraid to get older because then you're gonna have to try to look younger and you're racing against this time.
Also, I want to say this too. When Mammaw says she hasn't worn short sleeves in 15 years, think about that was 75 when that started. So these young people are 30. They're starting to worry
Yeah.
about their,
Right.
their
That's
aging.
so
And you're
true.
like, no, you got a good 35 more years before you need to even start thinking about that. You
Well, you
know,
have to think about covering up.
starting to
Exactly.
yes,
Well,
don't
I
do it.
I never really wanted to look younger.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yes.
I just always wanted to look the best I could at the age I was.
Yes.
That's
And
good.
that's
it.
That's a really
That's
good
it.
advice. And
Uh-huh.
that goes back to being fully where you're at and owning
Yeah.
that space and saying this is the best age I can be because this is the age I am.
That's right.
And I'm going to be the best version of me at 93. And I'm going to be the
You
best
got
version
it.
of me at
Yes.
27. And if you
And
can,
I look back at pictures of myself in my 30s, and I think I look better now than I looked at my 30s.
I will
Sometimes
have
those
to
pictures
say
are
you do.
So you can get better with age, I will say.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
can.
I'm not saying there aren't things. Yeah, my neck's more wrinkly. There's things for sure.
Your fashion is on
But
point
still,
though.
thank you. My fashion by 30 was rough.
Yeah, it's pretty
So
bad.
Again, that was the 90s. No, when was it? Oh, wait.
my 30s, early 2000s.
2000,
We've
which
been
was
living too long.
bad.
Yeah, which is
a
bad,
bad
anyway.
time. That's
yeah,
true.
That's not on you.
That's true.
Not. You were
Yes.
probably good in the time. It's
For the
just-
time.
Well, actually, the
I
other
don't know.
day, I was talking about going and speaking at that Passion Summer Night, and that was where I first started, my first message. And Steph said, "You should wear the same outfit." And I said, "That didn't really age well." And it was already, that was just 8 years ago. But I'm that actually is not very cute.
Yeah.
But it was cute.
then.
8 years
Yes.
ago, it's not really
Yes.
cute now. So
I've
it's
actually
funny
been
how
working
fast it
on
happens.
on a Instagram on a reel of my hairdos, through the
Oh,
years.
that's
So I'm
awesome.
gonna have to put that up because Willie always looks at my pictures and he's like, "Woo, you had some hairdos," But when you've lived to be 71, you've had some hairdos.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you just have, and
Oh,
you've gone
yeah.
through some bad things, and some worked and some
But
didn't work.
everybody else was doing it.
Yeah,
That's right. Everybody did it too.
It didn't
Yes.
seem
I
bad
was
at the
doing
time.
what was being done at
Yes,
that time.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so, it's the way it is. But
That is
Yeah.
so funny. I love it. Well, this has been amazing. I have laughed and cried and held back tears the whole time, as I know all of us have. But thank you all for
Loved
speaking
it.
into my life so much and then overflowing to all the people listening. Appreciate it.